On today's Rainmaker Family show, we interviewed JaLynn Manser, who is the top 1% of real estate investors in Arizona. She went from a barista, a single mom, just went through a divorce, to a millionaire in her career. And not only that, but on today's episode, too, we had a special guest that joined her about halfway through the episode.
That's right. Her now husband, Kelly, joined for a part of the show, which was super fun because we met Kelly at a conference. We just connected deeply at a conference we were both at. And he's like, "You got to meet my wife." And that's how this whole thing happened. And so, super excited to dive in with JaLynn and hear some wisdom from Kelly as well. So, stay tuned. It's going to be an awesome show.
All right, Rainmakers, I am so excited to have our guest on today. Just a couple weeks ago, I had the honor of being on her podcast and show where we just got to dive more into business as a women and moms, and just the ups and downs that we all kind of go through. And so I was just really struck by this guest, just like warmth and like joy. So I'm so excited to have you on, JaLynn, and just share more about your story. So welcome.
Thanks, Stephen and Chelsey. Appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. I'm so honored to be here, actually. Thank you.
Now, JaLynn, for anyone who doesn't know, has gone from what she calls barista to millionaire. And in this podcast, we'd love to dive into that journey. I think, JaLynn, that'd be just a really fun place to start. And then we, of course, have some questions about your expertise, which is real estate investing. I know we have a lot of our listeners who have the desire to own homes, to invest in real estate, to grow their wealth through that vehicle. And so we'll definitely get into that at the end of the show. But let's start with barista. Take us back to JaLynn, the barista, and take us on your journey a little bit.
Absolutely. So let me back up prior to that position. I was a stay-at-home mom, like many of the women that you serve are as well. And I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 15 years, and I found myself going through a divorce by my own choice. That's a whole other story. But found myself becoming a single mom, which seemed like it was happening overnight. I had three young daughters to take care of. I didn't have any job skills because I had been a stay-at-home mom for so many years and I didn't ever work outside of the home, right? So I was like, what the heck am I going to do? So I decided, because I love coffee and I love people, why not get a job at Starbucks as a barista? And so I made my mind up that I was going to get all dressed up. I went in and talked to the manager and I said, "You're going to hire me today. I want to work here." And so he did. He hired me, and it was super fun for about 2 months, and then I was like, "Okay, this is not for me." I'm not a huge fan of being chained behind a cash register, but I did meet some amazing people, some amazing customers, and through one encounter, that one customer came in one day and she presented me with an opportunity. She was like, "JaLynn, you would make a great title rep." I was like, "Sounds great. What's a title rep? Sign me up." So 4 interviews later, they hired me. The company Stewart Title hired me to be a title rep for Orange County, California. So through that job, I basically realized that I wanted to be on the other side. I wanted to get into real estate and be the realtor having title reps call on me instead of the other way around. And so I quickly got my license. This was in 2016. And I literally had about $400 in my bank account at that point in time. So I just made the decision that I was going to make it. I literally went around and talked to everybody that I could find. I went and talked to moms at the parks, handed out my business card. I went into the coffee shops. "Who wants to buy or sell or rent a home today? I can help you." So just getting my name out there, and through that process of getting into real estate and then also learning about the power of leverage and using other people's money to control an asset, it just all kind of like started snowballing. And I was very blessed with some amazing initial clients to kind of help get me off the ground. And it's just been just so transformational and life changing. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Wow. There's a couple topics like I think it'd be really fun to dive into with you. And and you've like really, I mean, started from just a title rep to becoming one of the top 1% realtors in your area or in the state you live in, which is pretty incredible. But I think that one word you said there, leverage, is one that we
Mm.
hit a lot with our rainmakers, and really just, especially for moms, especially for single moms, like you need leverage. You can't be in something that's just a 1-to-1 ratio, right? Of
Mhm.
whether it's time put in and money coming out, or even in investments you're looking into. So when I don't know, when you first started learning about leverage, like how would you, what was like, I guess, the aha moment for you? And how would you explain to someone who's like, what is this leverage thing? Like, what are you talking about here?
So, when I learned about leveraging the power of OPM, other people's money, I was like, wait, you can do that? You can literally work with what, I have so much to talk about that I can't really cover in a 45-minute period. But one of our business partners that we work with, which is ultimately Blackstone, they are the largest private equity firm in the world. Like, get this, they're going to use their cash to buy a home for you to rent out. And all you have to put forth is a security deposit, which you'll get back either way, either at the end of your lease or it goes towards the purchase. So, my husband Kelly and I were able to use one of our business partners. They bought a house for us. This is an example up in North Phoenix a couple years ago for $350,000. And all we had to put forth was a $3,100 security deposit, right? Just like any other rental. And our purchase option price was because we had the right to buy the home. We had 5 years with, you know, a 5 year period that we had time to do that. We ended up buying it back from Blackstone at the end of 1 year. Our purchase option price was 364, 700. And remember, they paid 350 for it. When we got to the point where we were getting a loan and actually getting the financing to put the home in our name, the appraisal came in at $538,000.
Wow.
We gained almost $170,000 in equity just from renting. Now, I don't know a better example of using other people's money. It's
Wow.
crazy.
That's powerful. So break it down a little bit more. Like, so someone like I know is listening to this and like, wait a second, what? Like, how can I do this? So you were renting the house, like you guys were living there.
Well, we lived there part of the time, truth be told. We After the company bought the home, we literally went in there and did a complete gut job, remodeled it. We put about 70 grand worth of upgrades. Not that I'm saying, this is the way to do it, but we basically found a diamond in the rough. We found a home that needed a little bit of love, a little bit of lipstick, that was in a great neighborhood where the other home values were, considerably higher. So, not that it's required to do that as far as the upgrades and everything, but we did have the home leased out for a period of time, having somebody
Oh
else
wow.
pay our rent payment for us. So, we were literally out of pocket, like realistically speaking, like nothing.
Wow.
So,
Mhm.
that's the power of using, the leverage of other people's money. That's just one example.
Mm. That is, we're newer to like investing and making our money work for us. And, there's passive investments and like,
Yeah, newer in the real estate
yes,
world,
in
you
the real
say.
estate
Yeah.
world. Yes. Yeah. And I remember like first, I don't even know when it was about learning about like borrowing other people's money, using other people's money. And it's just like, what? Like, is that legal? Like, is that okay? Because no one where I've grown up around, like, at least was talking about or doing that. So I think it can be really stretching, but in a good way to like
Yeah.
learn all of these amazing opportunities that are out there. That if you do your research and partner with the right people and the right company, like it makes so much sense.
Mm.
Absolutely. And not only to utilize this lease option program for yourself as a renter or somebody who's looking to control an asset, but if you're interested in getting into real estate, utilizing this as part of your real estate business. And just to give you an example, last year we did 75 transactions alone just utilizing lease purchase programs. And then the year before we did 137 sides. And how amazing is that that we were able to help so many renters get into homes that they actually have the opportunity to purchase at some point?
Wow.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's epic. Yeah. I feel like when we started all of our online businesses and things, we were always using our own money for stuff. And it would always be like, oh, we got to save up and then do this thing. And I feel like when you start to learn how to leverage or how to use leverage, right? When it comes to OPM or other people's money, you just buy speed. You like can go so much faster. But I think sometimes the speed scares people who are not used to that. Like when you started, was that your first deal you did with kind of leverage, or did you kind of ease your way into it? I know with real estate, there's not really like super small deals, right? Like with Amazon or what we're getting into, someone could borrow $10,000 and probably get started. With real estate, sometimes you need a little bit more, right? So did you work your faith level up to kind of like stretch for some of those bigger kind of steps of faith, so to say, when it comes to taking risk and taking on leverage?
So what it happened realistically when Kelly and I, actually, when our business partner announced that they were opening up in Arizona, we were living in California at the time. And this was back in 2019, they announced. And so it wasn't really up until that point in time that we realized that, or I should speak for myself, I realized that I could truly capitalize on this as a viable business model, not only for my business, but to actually help other renters get into homes. And we've not only used one business partner, we've actually utilized three to control assets. Another company purchased a home for us in downtown Phoenix for $325,000. We've had it rented out the entire time for almost 3 years now, having someone else pay our rent payment. And that one has an assumable mortgage. Which to make it very simple, like the mortgage payment, the payments they've been making that from our rent, it's been paying the mortgage down. And so whatever that balance is currently, we get to take advantage of that. So our assumption price on that house right now is about 319, I believe, and the home is worth somewhere around 450, 475. So and again, we're out of pocket maybe $3,000 for a security deposit, and that's it. So it's just been such a game changer for us. And I would love to teach everybody how to do it.
That's
Mhm.
awesome. Now you have education on this, and I know you're still spending a lot of your time selling actively in the real estate space, investing, but you have started to educate on this as well. Like, so we'll definitely want to get those links at the end. We'll put them in the show notes for anyone who's into it. Yeah, I feel like me and Chelsey, like we've always gotten, we've always done I feel like we always find ourselves in service-based businesses. That's where we started. That's where we kind of cut our teeth. And we were in the wedding industry for years.
Mhm.
And then kind of like branched off into other things. We got into e-commerce, we got into coaching, and just started to dip the toes into real estate. Of
Mm.
course, our personal homes and things like that. Then we got an investment property here in Chico. And we're now starting to dream about, okay, let's expand the real estate portfolio. Like it's just so good to diversify. There's so many tax benefits. And so for someone who's earlier in the real estate game, I don't know, what is some wisdom you can share with us, just like from someone who's more seasoned? You've done so many more transactions. If you could look back and I don't know, advise us in the real estate investing world, what would be those tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many ways that you can invest in real estate without using your own money. You can get a loan, you can do seller financing, find a seller that's willing to just let you take over their payments. You can, find a rental and do leasing arbitrage where you're paying the landlord the amount of rent, if it's $2,000 or whatever, and then you're subleasing it out to somebody else via Airbnb and getting, making $1,000 a month profit. I mean, there are so many ways. So I would say I would encourage you, whoever's interested in getting into real estate and investing, is kind of figure out what you want to do. If you want to work on, getting an Airbnb listing, doing the leasing arbitrage, if you want to try and do a lease option using somebody else to buy the house and, just pay that security deposit, having somebody rent the home and pay your rent payment for you and then buy it when you're ready at some point in time. Maybe you're waiting for interest rates to come down. They're a little bit high right now still, but I would basically just say, kind of figure out what you're interested in. If you're interested in, trying to get into flips, do you have extra money sitting aside that you don't really know what to do with and you want to invest it into real estate, which has, history has shown that real estate has been a pretty safe investment, other than looking at the 2008 crash, right? But for the majority, it's like real estate's a really safe investment. And I would encourage you to reach out to me as well if you have any questions on, utilizing other people's money to invest in real estate.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
We were just down in Southern California. I know you have experience down there. And we were like, oh, it'd be awesome to own like a beach house down here someday. Like, is there any strategies to go after a bigger investment like that? Like, I know like you can rent these out. A lot of the places down there, it's like half and half. You can, it's a duplex type of thing. Did you work with anyone doing more, or probably even in Arizona too? You probably have a lot of luxury properties that are, more destinations. We're just like dipping our toes into that world and just researching right now. So I don't know. You've been in OC, you've been in Arizona. I know Scottsdale's got a ton of places. What do you see people in that kind of luxury rental or luxury real estate? What are the strategies they're employing?
Sure, that's a great question. It really is a matter of, how much money you have to invest or not. If you don't have a ton of money, you might want to look into doing a leasing arbitrage, find out what that rent payment is on that particular property, get with the landlord and, get their permission to basically lease it out through Airbnb. There's, a bunch of contractual stuff you need to sign, obviously, but as long as the numbers make sense, you need to factor in not only your rent payment, but how much are you going to be able to get for that rental on Airbnb or VRBO or Furnished Finder, which is another great place to find short term renters. It's solely, I would say 90% of the people on there in Furnished Finder are travel nurses, which you can get some really great people in your furnished rentals using that platform. So it really just kind of depends on, your preference. If you have a ton of money to put down, you might want to invest in a property. And then I've also seen a lot of fractional ownership where somebody might own like 1/8 of the property. They have a specified time for that property that they're able to use that to do whatever they want during that time. And that's a typically much more inexpensive way to get into a property if you're trying to control like one of those more luxury type assets.
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah. I would love to know, JaLynn. I know there's like so much talk right now about like recession and things are expensive. Like I was just with a friend and she's like, I'm sure things are just so much more. I hear that like often, which like, the groceries and like those things like have gone up, and coming from a place of like single mom, working at Starbucks, like building up, like I know that you've built like mindset muscles that are probably propelling you forward as you especially interact with clients in a season like this. So like what are you telling like clients looking for homes now? Because I think that like there's always going to be incredible opportunities regardless of like the economy or what, the mainstream media is saying. So I would love to know like your perspective and like why you still like love real estate right now.
Yeah, great question. So, what I would say to someone considering buying a home right now, it's a great time to buy because we are not seeing any sort of a crash. And as far as the recession goes, I mean, we're still waiting for those lagging indicators to catch up. And the feds are like, okay, it's official. We were in a recession, right? But right now, we are seeing a really decent amount of sellers giving concessions to the buyers. For an example, let's say on a $400,000 house, they might be willing to give the buyer $12,000 to help buy down their interest rate, get them down into the low fours, and use a portion of that to pay for their closing costs. So, right now is the perfect time to get into a home if you are looking to purchase right now, because guess what? In a couple of months, those prices are going to start going back up and inventory is still historically low. So by the time those interest rates do come down, guess what? It's going to be a frenzy out there again. It's going to be a bidding war. You're going to have to start bidding 25, 50, $100,000 over list price to get that home. So now is the perfect time.
true.
I love that. People
Yeah.
are like more flexible about like, oh, we're still on this like I don't know, stage, and they
Yeah.
might, be willing to help out. I love that
I think the interest
perspective.
rate thing, like, it scares people off, like, because it's like so high. But if you look, like, I was just looking at the history, the interest rate history, and it was like in the 80s, this thing was like 15%, 20%, and then it's like actually come down a lot. And so, like, historically, you like zoom out. I'm like, this is actually
Mhm.
not that high.
Like, didn't your mom say like their
Yeah, like when
home?
they bought a house, it
Yeah,
was
I
like
was like, whoa.
17% interest or something. And I was just like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Kelly
Stephen,
wants to jump in.
I had 21% interest on one of my homes.
wow.
Wow.
Mm. Yeah, but money in the bank was getting 18, 19% on CDs.
Yeah.
But I wanted to chime in on a couple of things that you guys were alluding to, and JaLynn alluded to, is like right now is realistically the perfect storm. The market's in a really good kind of neutral position, and there's very, very, very limited supply on the market. Now, that's normally not good for a buyer. But right now, sellers are willing to give 3 to 5% concessions. They're not willing to necessarily lower the price. But for instance, we were able to get a couple people into homes recently where we got the seller to actually put down the down payment.
Wow.
So think about this. You can get a home right now, probably get it just a little bit under list. The seller will pay you 3.5% in escrow to cover your down payment. For about 12 grand, you could get into a $400,000 home, have about a $2,700 mortgage payment, which, by the way, you're probably going to be paying more rent, which does go up every year, but your mortgage payment doesn't. And then probably 70% of your mortgage payment is a deduction off your earned income.
That's right.
So it saves you thousands of dollars. So I would tell everybody, I'm like preaching to the choir, I know, but
Love it.
I've been telling everybody, don't be stupid, don't wait.
Yeah.
Like there's no better time than right now. I've been in the real estate game. I got my very first house in 1973 when I came out of the Marine Corps. It was a $6,000 house, and I got it on a lease with right to purchase. My mortgage payment was $80. I thought I was going to die because that was my whole stipend I got from the VA to go to school.
Crazy.
But I've never seen a time that is as good as right now, because the market where the country's still growing, even states where people are leaving like California,
Yeah.
but the net growth is still growing. We only have so much land. And right now you can get into homes, even though the interest rates are high. We've been able to get the sellers to buy down the interest rates into the 4s.
Wow.
Mm.
So you can actually get your down payment assistance, you can get interest rate reduction, and get into a home that is right for you and your family in the neighborhood, in the right school districts you want your kids to go to school in, and get in that home now. So that's why we love the lease with right to purchase or rent to own programs we run, because if you're going to rent with purpose.
Rent with purpose.
Mm.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. Cause like I haven't really heard a lot of people
Yeah,
preach
I
that
haven't as
kind of
much, yeah.
angle. It's like, hey, there's two sides, rent or own, right? But I
Yeah.
love this. Like maybe you're in the in between, you're not sure. Like, why don't you give yourself the option
Mm.
to purchase? I love that, rent with purpose. And they're buying down the interest rate too. I think people just get so scared by
Yeah.
these bigger numbers, and they're just not thinking creatively and being resourceful. Like
Mhm.
there are so many fun ways you can structure a deal and, get around realtors who have a mindset like you guys, where you think creatively about, oh,
Mhm.
we can do this, we can pull this lever, we can do that. And that's not one I've ever really
Yeah,
thought
I
of.
love
Like, I'm like,
that.
oh, you just, you get what you get,
Yeah.
It was only recently when someone was like, we have a lender that we've worked with a couple times, and like, we just go to them. We just gone to them a lot. But we had someone recently like, you should shop that around. Like, you should go get a few different options. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, duh. Like,
Yeah.
that's a big expensive thing in the long run if you just get a lower interest rate.
Yeah.
And so, man, I just love the way you guys think. And I'm sure there's gonna be some listeners who are like, they've been thinking about buying a home, they've been
Yeah.
thinking about moving, and fear has held them back, And
Mm.
I think we have really learned that in those seasons, when you move, when you take action, like
Mhm.
it's so worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Stephen, you talk about fear holding people back, and this is the problem with social media, right? There was a gentleman here in the Phoenix area who wrote this really great little article about how repossessions are up in Phoenix in January of this year, almost 1,000% over the previous year. Now, in digging deeper, it went from 4
Yeah.
the previous year in a town of like 2 million people,
Wow.
4 to 40.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
norm, it would be about 150 to 180.
yeah.
Mhm.
So we're at 40, but the headline is repossessions in Phoenix are up 1,000%.
Yeah.
Oh, the sky is falling.
Yeah. Don't believe what you read. Come
Yeah.
on. Oh my God.
Right. And so I would caution everybody.
Yeah.
Like, take everything with a grain of salt and do your own due diligence and do the research. When somebody says something like that, what are they selling? They're selling headlines so you'll subscribe to their publish so they can get money from their advertisers. Like,
Absolutely.
and I get it. It's look, that's why I don't watch the news. I don't want to hear about all the things that are wrong in the world. And that's why I think today it's so important. And you guys do this. You've got to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that are always thinking of the positive. And one thing I prided myself on, and I know JaLynn is doing a really great job of this in the last couple of years, is we don't ever look at something and say, we can't make it happen. It's like, okay,
Say, how can we?
it's how can we?
Yeah.
What can we do? And who can we use? Who can we like get together with that could help us solve this problem and accomplish our goal? Because it's really about the people you surround yourself with, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So true.
And you look at your 5 closest friends, I can pretty much tell you what your life's going to be about based upon the 5 people you're hanging out with. But the bottom line is you've got to be positive. You've always got to look for the positive outcome and a way to make stuff happen. And too many people put their blinders on and all they hear is the noise out here. And like I tell my wife, look, I'm a former Marine. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I always find a way.
They never quit.
Yes,
never
I
quit.
love that. It's so
job,
it's
babe.
so true. People quit too soon, too early. It's just like, no, keep going. You're meant to keep going.
Absolutely. On that note, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned briefly. If people are, reaching out to their lender, I know you have a go-to lender, but people don't realize is, they think that they have to go to the big boxes like B of A or Wells Fargo. Not that I should mention names, but they don't realize that they have a very, very small and limited amount of types of loans that they can do. They don't get super creative. Versus if you reach out to a broker, a mortgage broker, they have access to literally hundreds and hundreds of different loan programs and different investors, and they're going to get you the best interest rate and the best terms. And if you are somebody who has maybe a little bit funky history as far as lack of income, or maybe you just went through a bankruptcy, like reach out to the brokers or even consider doing a lease option so that we can get you into a home. It's not just always, cut and dry. Don't go to the big boxes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
that's
true.
huge. We've seen that too. Like even smaller
Mm.
banks or credit unions, sometimes they're a lot more flexible than the big box, mainstream banks, like who are like,
Mhm.
no, we'll never lend to that type of thing. But yeah, you'd be surprised. Like sometimes you're just one connection away, one
Mhm.
person away from a resource that can
Absolutely.
help you in this season. So, JaLynn, in your like entrepreneurial journey, I want to end with this kind of question here. You know, we, uh, we're talking about fear holding you back and pushback, and you know, going from barista to where you're at now, right? I'm sure it wasn't just like a straight line, to success, right? There's pushbacks, there's walls. What was one of those walls that came up in the process, and what was like a mindset that got you through in that season?
So let me just back up and start with telling you about my spiritual journey. I'll try and keep it brief, but I was a self proclaimed atheist for about 30 years, 35 years. And it wasn't until I was going through that divorce, I had a moment where I was sitting on the driveway and I didn't know what else to do other than, all right, God, if you really are there, if you really are listening, show me a sign. And that's where I was at that point in my journey. And so literally, I kid you not, that I was sitting on the driveway. It was 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m., and it was dead silent. I mean, you couldn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden I felt this whoosh, like this giant wind. And I was like, oh, you know what? I think you're listening. And I just started crying. Tears were rolling down my face. And then from that point forward, I decided to explore. I decided to figure this whole God thing out. And so I went to multiple churches and I finally found one that felt like home. So I stuck with that one. But had it not been for me coming into a relationship with God, I don't believe for a second that I would have had the ability and the wherewithal to do what I've done. It's all come from God. To have that, jumping into things with no fear, to just trust 100% and like just do what I have to do and just knowing, having this sense of knowing. And so that's not necessarily something that you can teach, but to answer your questions, did I have any roadblocks or obstacles? I would say, I mean, there was a period of time where I went through a bad relationship. I thought, this boyfriend that I was with was a good idea because he was also in real estate. And my real estate business completely tanked that year. So I allowed myself to focus too much on him and versus on God, what God was telling me to do. So outside of that, I really haven't had many things happen that I would consider to be an obstacle.
Mhm.
Wow. That's awesome. How did you and Carrie meet? I just am curious.
So Kelly and I met at a bar on St. Patrick's Day back in 2018. Like neither one of us wanted to go out that night. I felt like total crap. I had been out showing homes all day, and my friends like, "Come on, JaLynn, let's go out." And we went to this bar called the Shamrock in Murrieta, California. I don't know if you know it, but um, so conversely, Kelly was not feeling well that night. As it turns out, he found out later he was just coming down with type 1 diabetes, just out of the blue, which is like really bizarre. So he dragged himself out. He's like, with a name like Kelly, you have to go out on St. Patrick's Day, right? So there I am. I go to the bar and I get 2 Long Islands because I'm like, there's no way I'm going back in the line because it was like super crowded. So I'm standing there watching the band and just kind of minding my own business. And then I look over, Kelly's standing there. Didn't know what his name was at that point in time. He's wearing this really cool European style striped sweater, like really tight fitting. He's like really fit, right? I was like, huh, I wasn't looking for a man or a relationship that was not on my radar, but I was like, you know what? He looks really nice. So as it turns out, he had come in and he had seen me, and I guess the light was shining on my hair or something. And it's like, oh, that girl has a cool hairstyle. So that's how we met. It was pretty amazing. He literally proposed to me 3 months later in Prague. He flew me out for my birthday, and then we got married three months after that.
Wow.
Aw, so cool. Where did you guys get married?
So we got married in our house in La Quinta, California, which, by the way, that house, we also used the leverage, the power of leverage of using somebody else's money to get that house too. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You got your house and your wedding venue, 2-for-1 deal. That's good.
That's right. Yeah, we ended up selling that house about a year and a half later just to kind of cash out and use that to invest in another properties in Phoenix. So.
So cool. What a fun story. Oh, well, thank you so much for being on the Rainmaker Family Show. And we got a special guest in as well,
I
which
know,
was
that's
so
fun.
awesome. But if people want to know more about like real estate investing or just where you're at, if they're resonating with your message, what is the best way that people can connect with you?
So people can Google me. I'm pretty much all over the place. You can follow me on my Instagram. Just Google JaLynn Manser Shaw or just JaLynn Manser, the J group. I'm on Instagram, YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, Facebook. Outside of that, my phone number, if you want to call me or text me, is 480-382-2973. Or you can reach out to Chelsey and Steve and be like, hey, how do I get a hold of JaLynn?
Cool.
Perfect.
I love
Love
it.
that.
Well, thank you, JaLynn. This has been awesome. I love talking all things mindset journey and real estate, and excited for your project you're working on. JaLynn told us she's working on a book. So very excited for that, showing more of the journey. So definitely stay tuned to JaLynn's stuff and connect with her. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was great to see you again. God bless.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. Hey, if you are not a part of our Rainmaker Mastermind, we have a new opportunity for you to book a one-on-one strategy call with one of our Rainmaker coaches.
If you want to get a call with them, see if it's a good fit for you to work with us to build a business that allows you to have time freedom and financial freedom, you can get that call at makeitrainmama.com/podcast. That's makeitrainmama, MOMMA.com/podcast.